All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Killian, and I'm from the State Department's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, which is a very long way of saying we are the anti-crime part of the State Department that supports some of our interagency colleagues and other host nation partners overseas. So we have a great panel to you today that Nil's already introduced. But before we introduce them, I want to give a little bit of a chapeau of why we're here, what we're doing, and why this is raised to such a high level of importance in the US government. So for the last 4 to 5 years, we've been tracking the proliferation of scams targeting US citizens. And it's to the point where in 2024, FBI's I3C Complaint Center registered at least $16.6 billion of US losses. That's an estimate. We know those numbers are underreported. There's a much higher number of scam proceeds that are being stolen from American citizens. Of that amount, we're tracking scam operations at a large scale in places like Southeast Asia, in West Africa, in places like Jamaica. There are different actors and different threats, but we are looking at this holistically around the world. So without further ado, I'd like to pass down for our panelists to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Goldfoot. I'm a Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Department of Justice Criminal Division. As part of that, I oversee several of our sections, but that includes the computer crime and intellectual property section, which has been involved in hacking offenses generally, but also online scams.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, GASA, for inviting the FBI to the conversation this week. My name is Rebecca Keithley. I am currently the Assistant Section Chief of the FBI's Financial Crime Section. In our portfolio, we've got corporate fraud, securities fraud, commodities fraud, but also why we're here today, cyber-enabled fraud and money laundering. I used to serve as the FBI's National Elder Justice Coordinator and the cyber-enabled fraud coordinator as well.
Good afternoon, Chris Landberg. I was here earlier today, so hopefully some of you remember me. I'm currently head of INL, and we work very closely with DOJ, DHS, Treasury, the rest of the US government, foreign partner governments to counter transnational criminal organizations and all the legal activities they're involved in, which increasingly has included online scams, countering that.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, GASA, for having Department of Treasury here. I lead the Cyber-Enabled Fraud Priority Group for the Office of Cyber Security and Critical Infrastructure Protections.
All right, so I want to talk about maybe 3 different areas that the US government is focusing: law enforcement, protection of US assets, and international cooperation. So for Josh and Rebecca, I want to know if you could tell us a little bit about the role of DOJ and FBI when it comes to combating scams. You know, what kind of efforts are underway, and what can you tell us about, those efforts, both present but also over the past couple of years?
Yeah, so we've seen over the past 10, 15 years, the landscape has changed, and we're all aware of that. It used to be predominantly domestic-based actors. Now it's a transnational criminal enterprise problem. And so we have adapted. We are fusing data from multiple sources, victim complaint information, cyber information, financial tracing information, information from foreign law enforcement, and of course private sectors. And this allows us to identify the networks, the nodes, the facilitators, the financiers, the flow of funds, which we are using to go after networks. We used to be primarily focused on individual actors, right? But now we're taking a big step back and looking at the networks. And the thing about these cases, it takes time, right? We identified years ago, and this is before pig butchering became the problem that it is today. We identified a scalable solution to adapt to the transnational nature of this problem. But that requires resources, right? It requires coordination, it requires targeting, and we've been doing this, but when we talk about the, that whole of government approach, I think really what we're talking about is at scale. I think the problem demands a much bigger scale than we can arrest our way out of.
I agree. So I have been working in computer crime investigation and prosecution for about 20 years. I would say that scam centers, to me, are one of the most frightening things that's come up in that time. I would compare this moment similar to where we were in 2018 when ransomware started going after big game efforts. This is, you can look at the statistics, like, we've already heard about the amount of losses, or that there was a 1,250% increase in scam reporting to FBI over the last couple of years. You can look at the damage that's being done to victims. You heard U.S. Attorney Pirro this morning refer to it as economic homicide. I think, for me, one of the aha moments was I was reviewing a prosecution memo for a defendant who we weren't initially looking at for scam center work. He was a money laundering guy. And one of the phrases he was using that we collected in his communications through lawful collection was Cambodian internet slaves, which was a significant moment to say, I'm sorry, what? What is going on here? And I think that moments like that have begun to happen across law enforcement, of people begun to appreciate that the dimensions of this problem go beyond economic damage, but really are an insult to universally held moral values, making it all the more important that we have a significant, strong law enforcement attack against this.
Thank you both. So, thinking about what DOJ and FBI are doing, Chris, can you talk a little bit about, where does state, live in all this ecosystem? What is the role that state plays? How do we work in this space, to support our partners?
Sure, and I did touch a little bit on this earlier, but I'm going to reiterate some key points. So as I mentioned earlier, our focus is countering transnational criminal organizations. The way we do that is we coordinate, and the State Department has a coordinating role within the interagency, but at INL in particular, we are enabling our U.S. law enforcement partners and our overseas law enforcement partners. We're doing this directly. For example, we can actually fund DOJ or DHS or even Treasury officials embedded overseas, like working out of our embassies, or we can fund their travel to other countries. And then we have training and equipping programs where we work with the law enforcement counterparts in all of these countries. And you mentioned, Cambodia. Cambodia is a country where, the government is under pressure. There's a lot of corruption and their capacity levels are very low. So we're all trying to help build those capabilities and, along with some of their neighbors, but it's quite a difficult road to hoe. The other thing that we have advantage in using is what's called the Transnational Organized Crime Rewards Program. And I think if you go back and you look at U.S. Attorney Pirro's press conference where she launched the strike force, she clarified how DOJ with FBI can charge overseas organizations and criminals. And then Treasury OFAC clarified how they can use sanctions to go after organizations and criminals. And then when I spoke, I highlighted that we use our rewards program. So we can put out rewards programs, and during that conference, we increased a reward offer on an organization that was involved in scam centers. And that's a way to get information leading to the arrest, capture of individuals involved in these activities, or even we can provide rewards for information leading to the seizure or the forfeiture of assets that were illicitly derived. So those are some of the things that the State Department does and INL does in particular.
Thank you. So given the audience here today, there's a lot of people from tech world, from other private sector, civil society, media. I think we have probably almost 200 years of experience across the panel working in the government. So I'm wondering, how you've seen us partner with the private sector, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and maybe a couple of examples, if you can think of any, that you'd like to highlight.
The private sector is critical to this. We cannot do it. I think I'm speaking for all of us. We can't do it without you. The FBI has a number of initiatives where you all are feeding directly into it. You all see this stuff every day, the size and the scale that we just don't. We rely on the private sector for trend analysis, pattern analysis, right? The best packages, the best referrals are those that are actionable and something that we can ingest into our system, whether it's just a completed package. We work closely with FINRA. And FINRA has identified, and we've identified as well, a massive problem affecting the integrity of the U.S. markets. We call it the ramp and dump. And it's the Chinese variable interest entities. President Trump signed an executive order on, I think it's called America First investment policy. I might have just butchered that, but that's the gist of it. And it targets this variable interest entity structure that Chinese companies are using. And it's like this first derivative of a pump and dump, but we are seeing these entities targeting their victims through social media platforms, through fraudulent investment clubs. And so we've partnered really closely with FINRA, and they will hand us the most gorgeous referral packages. And one of the lessons learned, I guess best practices with that, is we have created dedicated teams throughout the country and also dedicated prosecutorial teams. So as the pump is happening, FINRA will make a phone call and we'll get on it and we'll take action. And we've had a number of successful asset freezes because of that partnership. We also have a proactive initiative. It's called Operation Level Up. Some of you might have read about it in the news. I can't go into much detail, but we use sophisticated cyber techniques to identify scams in progress. And it used to be pig butchering, cryptocurrency investment fraud, but it's expanded beyond that. And we will contact victims and inform them that they might be scammed, right? And so we will stop that. To date, I want to say we're over $400 million in estimated losses disrupted. So we rely on you all heavily. Actionable trend analysis is the best path forward when working with us. I'm done.
Oh, did you want me to comment too? I mean, I don't have too much to add. I think, you know, it's an old saying, I'm sure you've all heard it, but it really started in the counterterrorism fight 20, 30 years ago. It requires a network to defeat a network. And there are very few, as we were talking about before we came out here, there's no law enforcement challenges where we can arrest our way out of them. They all require a networked approach. I mean, you know, INL's in the State Department's strategy is to train and equip and enable all law enforcement. It is to work diplomatically and multilaterally. It is to counter trafficking in persons. But like the key component of working with the private sector is a critical element. I think that's where the scams are transiting through. So I think, you know, we see that as like really the fourth pillar of a four-pillar strategy for the State Department.
Yeah, and I'd also add, partner with us when you see activity that has no natural predator, right? Think of it like you can't disrupt the activity through your technology, whether it's because of sophistication or geography or jurisdiction. That's the red flag to reach out to federal law enforcement and ask to partner up with us. Or I would say before you want to establish that relationship, you can give me a call and I'll point you in the right direction, but definitely reach out to us at that point.
So I think both Chris and Rebecca, you just kind of touched on something that I'd like to draw a little bit more about, like the importance of communication, coordination, and information sharing. So I wonder if Musarat, if you could talk a little bit about your work with the Cyber-Enabled Fraud Priority Group at Treasury and how you help kind of facilitate some of that information sharing.
Sure, I think the establishment of the group is just testimony to the fact that that public-private partnership is working. So we've got our private sector partners coming to us and saying, we're experiencing fraud at unprecedented levels. We need your assistance. And our mission is to improve that ecosystem of information sharing within Treasury, across USG, and with our private sector partners. And it's a switch from not just information sharing for awareness, it's to make it actionable. That's primarily why we were established.
So maybe a follow-up question, what are you hearing most often from the private sector? Like what does that conversation look like?
So the conversation is primarily, as the gentleman who was on the panel earlier from Meta was saying, they see a portion of the activity. Well, the banks are seeing a portion of the activity. And what is that activity? I think earlier in the information sharing session with Abby, who was moderating, she said, what type of information sharing? So we're actually focused on sharing TTPs and IOCs, giving that contextualized data, so not just throwing a bunch of IPs so that they can be blocked, but really, this is how it looks kind of in a, this is how the kill chain works, this is how the bad actors are targeting your assets. That's the type of information sharing we want to move towards, yeah.
Thank you. So I wonder, maybe from Josh, your perspective, or Rebecca, yours, how do you view the coordination with Treasury and the role that they play, and how do you help feed into that ecosystem where they're taking information from financial institutions, from private sector, other flags, you're getting information from your sources and your teams as well. What does that coordination actually look like?
First of all, Treasury's work on this is enormously helpful. We are working with them from an early stage as we're building investigations. Treasury isn't just allowed to sanction people at will, right? They need evidence to support it and so on. Very often that evidence is coming from our investigations. And the announcement and the timing and the strategy of it is completely coordinated. For example, you just saw the announcement last month of seizures and forfeitures. At the same time, we had Treasury announcements. That wasn't an accident, right? They didn't stumble across the street to the same press conference. We announced that and coordinate that as part of a consistent effort across government to be addressing this type of challenge.
And from the FBI's perspective, I echo that. We also, we've got our recovery asset team. So if that's embedded with our Internet Crime Complaint Center, if we have a victim who has indicated they've lost money through a wire transfer and it's happened within the past 72 hours, there's some other parameters. It has to be a wire transfer and I think $50,000 or less. We can move pretty quickly and work to freeze the funds. And I would say it's probably about a 68 to 70% success rate, which is enormous.
Thank you. Ms. Wright, anything else you'd like to add from the Treasury perspective?
No, I think they covered it.
Cool. All right. So shifting a little bit to the international cooperation side and kind of what we do internationally, I wonder if, Chris, you can talk a little bit more. You've already touched on some of what INL does, some of what state does, but anything else you'd like to add on some of the tools and resources the Department of State brings to the fight?
I think the one thing I haven't mentioned is that we do have access to certain visa restrictions. Certain sections of U.S. law that allow us to cancel, eliminate, prevent individuals from getting visas to the United States based on corruption. There's also some elements that the INL doesn't control, but the State Department does related to human rights violations. So I think these are two tools that we have that we also integrate into the toolbox that is the U.S. interagency has to go after bad actors. And this is another way that we can pressure governments, other countries, to focus more on this issue because everybody wants to travel to the United States. I think, I guess I would add that I think we've mentioned this before, but like making use of international alliances like ASEAN, working through the United Nations, OAS, and other international entities to bring a coordinated multinational approach to these issues. I think that's another thing that the State Department's trying to do. And then what we are able to bring is the expertise that our law enforcement partners have, and bring that to bear so that when we have political will, which I think is something that's missing in a lot of parts of this conversation around the world, when we start to get political will and that traction, then we can bring in the expertise to actually do something about this.
Thank you. So I'd like to hear from DOJ, FBI, and Treasury as well about, like, how do you engage internationally? What does that look like in terms of the physical footprint, or how do you handle kind of cross-jurisdictional conversations, questions, investigations?
From the FBI's perspective, we've got legal attaches throughout the world. We have 63 legal attaches, and some of those jurisdictions we have dedicated assistant legal attaches in the epicenters of certain scam types. For example, Ghana. We have some in Bangkok, India, New Delhi. That's our big one. I agree with you. Whenever we can find that common interest, that's where we find success, right? And it starts small, and then we build upon that. And once we have established the trust of foreign law enforcement, we really see the big wins. We've been partnering with Delhi Police, Central Bureau of Investigation in India, to target the tech support scam call centers that emanate from India. And it's a fantastic marriage. We're taking private sector information. We're also taking Internet Crime Complaint Center victim complaints. What's happening is that Delhi police will go out and conduct a raid. They will seize information, send it to us, and we will scour our databases of derogatory information and identify victims, interview those victims, send that information back to Delhi, and that's where we see the disruptions and the dismantlements.
I think something that maybe isn't always widely appreciated outside law enforcement is how important personal connections are for coordination within law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Like being able to know someone in the other agency or the other country. And that's why FBI VGATs are important, but also the program that Chris funds in the Department of Justice, the ICHIP program, where we have DOJ prosecutors who are living overseas in places like Bangkok, who are making connections with law enforcement, particularly with prosecutors in local areas. Some of that's training. Some of these countries, they really just need training on the basics of how you investigate a computer crime case, or in some cases, how to be a prosecutor at all. But some of it is also coordination with them on the projects that they are doing or cooperating with us on international cooperation. That has definitely seen, to my mind, massive improvements in some of the cooperation we've gotten. It used to be, I remember there was one case years and years ago where we asked foreign law enforcement to seize a guy's computer, right? Seize the computer, send it back the evidence. We got it back like a year later, and when we did our own forensic analysis, we realized people in the police station had been using it to like write reports and stuff, like not helpful guys. We don't have that anymore. For example, we're seeing some sophistication in foreign law enforcement and how they're doing the searches of scam centers, knowing how to preserve evidence, knowing how to do a quick collection. That's the result of this cooperation. That's the result of some of the regional training we've been doing.
So I'd say for OSIP, having established, in addition to the Treasury attaches, these bilateral and multilateral engagements with strategic partners globally, in addition to co-chairing the cyber experts group that includes like an authorities group as well as an industry group. What that allows us to do, these channels of information and these relationships that have been established, is we know when the blank hits the fan, who do we call? Who's our phone a friend? And that's extremely important, whether it's fraud or any other cyber-enabled crises of the day.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
one thing to add is through those various information channels, we were actually able to share a Burmese playbook, fraud playbook, and with U.S. Secret Service. And they were able to use that for investigations and actions. And yes, I'll just stop there.
So you guys have touched on a couple different successes, but I wonder if we could go down the line and hear just one or two success stories that you've seen the U.S. either achieve or help enable in the international fight against scams.
Hey, we had, so we actually had something happen in October when there was a shutdown, and we don't do press releases during shutdowns basically, but we're very proud of a sentence that occurred in Central District of California, Los Angeles area, where a defendant named Joseph Wong, he had pleaded guilty to a conspiracy involving money laundering in connection with scam centers, and he was sentenced on October 6th to 51 months in prison, and also was required to do a very, very substantial restitution that is giving money back to victims.
Something that's very recent, we are compiling a team to go out to a Southeast Asian country. I have to speak on the periphery about it, but hitting upon what you mentioned, the relationship, the local police conducted a mortar attack on a scam compound last week, and because of the strength of our relationship, they are detaining the leaders of the scam compound, and we're hustling to get out there. And you know which one I'm talking about?
No?
Well, you do. Yeah. So to get a team out there to conduct interviews, gather intelligence, share that intelligence, of course, with our IC partners, review the evidence as well. That's a big win. Of course, I mentioned the Indian Tech Support Scam Call Center initiative that we had. Another thing, the recent $15 billion Bitcoin seizure that occurred in October, the largest in FBI and DOJ history. And then, of course, OFAC sanctioned the chairman of the Prince Group, and I want to say 150 executives and entities. They were found to using their political ties to influence local police to offer protection details, if you will. So they, of course, were operating, they constructed and operated a pig butchering scam compound. But it is directly attributable to those relationships that you mentioned.
Well, as much as some of us would like to be door kickers in INL, we actually are enabling our law enforcement counterparts. So and it's hard to, come after the 15 billion and seize cryptocurrency. There are a number of areas where, like, for example, in Thailand, we supported Secret Service. We provided digital forensic equipment. They worked with the Thai government and took down a network that was targeting Americans. In Ghana, we did something similar, working with FBI. So I think there are many different cases like this where we are having success. And it's we enable the law enforcement counterparts in these other countries to work with the organizations up here to have an impact. And I think we are having a significant impact. I will say, well, actually, maybe I'll leave it to the end, what I think we probably need to be focusing on next.
Sure.
I recognize I'm standing between you all and drinks or closing remarks, so I'm good.
Fair enough. Well, to slightly delay everyone a little bit more for libations, I guess maybe just a quick fire round of what is the one thing that you would like everyone to take away from each agency, just open-ended.
We want to arrest more of these people, and we need private sector help to do it.
I very much agree. This problem keeps me up at night. I'm extremely passionate about it. I encourage private sector to reach out, establish that relationship with us before you need it. Yeah, we need that whole of government approach, but at scale, which includes targeting, deconfliction, coordination. Law enforcement has finite resources. Also, we are juggling different priority sets. So, and also tell your friends and family and any senior citizen loved ones about the red flags of scamming.
Yeah, this is deeply personal for all of us. I'm sure we all have family members who are under threat all the time. I certainly do. I think this is about money, right? And I think the one thing we're doing on the counter-narcotics side is we're going to really be surging the focus on illicit finance when we go after these cartels. And I think that's also an area that we need to be doing it more of in this area. I think working with the private financial organizations, I think, is going to be a critical component of that. Working with FATF as well. So I think there's a number of areas that we could pursue in countering illicit finance. And I also just want to encourage all of you, because a lot of you have overseas operations. I really hope that your teams are part of, it's called OSAC, right? The Security Assistance Group that the Diplomatic Security Service organizes at all posts. I hope you have contacts with the LEGAT. That's a way for you to pass information to us, and I really encourage you to be doing it.
I'd like to end with kind of a summary of combat is a team sport. We know that. Know what to share, know who to share it with, and try and do it quickly.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
You win.
All right.
Yes.
Like mine.
Well, thank you, everyone. And we will have more from particularly FBI tomorrow and a couple different breakout panels to talk more about the law enforcement role that we play both internationally and on the more technical side. So definitely an opportunity to talk more with U.S. government about what's going on, what we can do to work together, and look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.